Hi, I'm here today at the DEMA building in London to talk about grand design. Last week we were lucky enough to be invited, along with a number of other influencers and members of the press, to go behind the scenes at Grand Design's latest TV project, which is currently being built in Stratford, East London. It's an absolutely phenomenal project. I mean, it's grand, isn't it? It's called Grand Design for a reason. And it certainly lived up to its name with the stunning sweeping staircase that you can see behind me. It was really interesting to go behind the scenes and meet some of the team and see how they make one of our favorite TV shows. Now the show has been running since 1999, and it started out as a magazine show before becoming a full-blown series. Then moving away from the original format of Kevin visiting build sites around the UK to focusing on one main build per series. And this year's series has now moved into its second phase of build, which we got to see last week. So, we're going to talk about what we saw and also share some ideas and inspiration for creating heritage-inspired interiors today. The house in question is a new build home. It's designed by architect and it is being built by a developer and lead designer and architect. Tom Atis. The original brief was to design a family home that celebrated its historical surroundings while providing a contemporary living environment, and so to achieve this, Tom looked to local historical precedents for inspiration and used traditional materials like brick, terracotta, and oak to complement the existing historic buildings nearby. And I think if you're designing a new build home today, whether it's a brand new build like this or whether you're restripping it all back and doing a huge refurbishment like we did in our home, it's as really important to have that balance of contemporary living, but also something that sits comfortably within its historical context. So this was the first thing that struck me when I walked in through the front door, the incredible sweeping staircase. It's made from steel and American white oak, and it takes center stage in the property. And I've always wanted a feature staircase in my own home. Unfortunately, the logistics of putting one in our home are pretty difficult. There's lots of structural work that would need to be done. But if you are lucky enough to have a space where you could put in a feature staircase, it is definitely worth considering, because it will definitely become a real talking point in any home and a real central focus. Now, in terms of colorways and material choices, this was really interesting because there was a lot of tactile natural materials on display. For example, the walls in the hall here are clad in oak and they've been deliberately left unpainted, allowing the natural beauty of the wood to shine through. And we're seeing more and more of this in modern homes today, where people are actually celebrating the natural beauty of materials such as concrete, brickwork, and also wood. In fact, we even saw Kevin from Grand Designs commentating that he had seen so much exposed brickwork in his professional life. And this is really interesting because if you look at historical homes, for example, this is the sort of aesthetic that you would have found 100 years ago, where you would see brickwork on display and also oak on display. So it's really interesting to see these traditional materials being used in a contemporary way within a modern home. We also saw the use of terracotta on display throughout the home. You can see here it's been used on the floors, it's been used on the walls. And again, this is a material that we would have traditionally seen in a British home 100 years ago. In fact, in our own home, we've recently refurbished our fireplace and we actually put in a terracotta pot for our stove. We love the natural texture and warmth that terracotta brings to a space, and I think in this particular home, it works really well with the oak and the brickwork to create a really warm and inviting atmosphere. There's also a real emphasis on craftsmanship throughout this build. Every piece of joinery has been handcrafted by local specialist joinery firms, and they take months to create. This includes the beautiful kitchen, which is made from solid oak. Another key element of good design is about balancing materials and textures and also colors carefully. And this is something that the designers have done really well here. You can see that they mixed and matched different materials to create a really interesting and dynamic feel. So in the kitchen, for example, you've got the oak on the wall units and the base units. You've got the terracotta on the floors and the splashback, and then you've also got the brick on display. And each of these elements brings something unique to the space. The kitchen was probably my favorite room in the house simply because of the scale of it. It's a very large kitchen and it has a real sense of drama. And this is created through the dark contrast of the kitchen units against the light oak flooring. And then you also have the brick on display on one of the end walls. And I think the brick really adds a sense of history and character to the space. One of the things that I noticed as soon as I entered the kitchen was the beautiful handmade ceramic sink. It's a really simple detail, but it's something that you don't often see in modern kitchens. Handmade ceramic sinks tend to be quite expensive. They're usually something that you find in high-end bespoke kitchens like this, and they just a really nice touch and they add a really nice level of detail to the space. Another thing that I really liked about the kitchen was the mix of materials that had been used on the work surfaces. So you've got a mix of oak, you've got ceramic, you've got stainless steel, and this mix of materials creates a really interesting and tactile surface. It's not just one material repeated over and over again. and I think that makes it really unique and special. Lighting was also a really key element in the design of the kitchen. You can see that they used a combination of pendant lights and spotlights to create a really warm and inviting atmosphere, and the pendant lights in particular add a really nice level of detail to the space. The master bedroom suite was also a highlight for me, because it had a really calm and relaxing atmosphere. Again, this was created through the careful selection of materials and textures. So you had the oak on the floor, you had the linen on the walls, and then you had the wool on the bed, and each of these materials brought a really nice level of warmth and texture to the space. Another thing that I really liked about the master bedroom was the mix of old and new. So the bed, for example, is a vintage piece that has been sourced from an antique shop, and then you have the more contemporary pieces of furniture alongside it, and I think that mix just creates a really interesting and dynamic feel. And finally, let's talk about the views. Because one of the great things about this house is that it has these incredible views across London, and this is something that the architect has really made the most of. You can see that they used full-height glazing to really maximize the views and bring the outside world in. So if you're thinking about building your own home or renovating your own home, I hope that this video has given you some ideas and inspiration for creating beautiful spaces that are both functional and also beautiful. Remember that it's the little details that make a house a home. So choose materials and finishes that you love and that you will enjoy living with for years to come. I'd like to say a massive thank you to the team for having us along to see the house. It was a pleasure to meet you and to see the house in person. If you want to see more from the world of interiors and furniture, do check out our website. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.